Money Radio, discussing the business of making and spending money.
Hello, you're welcome to today's edition of Money Radio on Leadership Podcast. Money Radio brings you the latest developments in Nigeria's business and economic cycles and issues of business around the world. My name is Innocent Odo, and today we're going to look at a very important development in Nigeria. It's very, very instructive that when you go out to the streets of Lagos, the streets of Abuja, and major states and in fact villages in the country, you will see one very ugly feature where people are now gathered in banks and other financial institutions to get money from the automated teller machines. Unfortunately, not many people will be very glad today or even yesterday or even tomorrow to get the required amount of money they need for their transactions and other businesses. And so today, a lot of them have actually resorted to the use of technology to supplement for the difficulties happening around getting the newly redesigned Naira notes. Unfortunately, even the technology seems to be giving them some difficulties. Throughout last week, there was some real problems of the unstructured supplementary service data, which didn't quite work well in some banks, and even some bank portals are also giving them serious concerns and serious problems. So a lot of the citizens of Nigeria are very stranded at this point of difficulties. And we're going to look at these issues now, why we have a cashless policy, the technology that is supposed to be deployed to support this policy is not readily giving people what they desire at this point in time. And so there's serious agony in the country. There's serious worry. There's serious concern being raised by experts, being raised by all stakeholders in the country as to how they're going to deal with these problems associated with this cashless policy. If you like, call it a Naira redesign. It may have been a very good intention, very good policy, but the implementation has been really, really very abysmal. And we're going to look at why and how this technology that was supposed to be used to support this policy is rather failing us in this very important hour of need. I am not alone in the studio. I'm here with a very, very important person who is so vast in the issue of ICT, and he's also very, very cognizant of the development around the cashless policies and cashless economies around the world. So he will be doing justice to all the issues that will be raised here in this program for today. I'm talking of no other person but my regular guest, ICT expert, Haniel Jafar. Haniel, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
Haniel, there's a problem in the country. And this is a very serious matter. Because if you go to the streets, you go to the banking halls, you go everywhere you go to, people are complaining of one thing. They cannot get their money. And so there's so much agony in the country. Now, yes, the cashless policy might be a very good idea, but then the implementation seems to be having some real problems. You talk about something like having capability and then not having capacity. That seems to be the case in this one.
Yes, it is. It is truly the case. In fact, that's the summary of the matter. The summary of the matter is simple. It's not usually about what you can do. It's how well can you do what you can do. Yes. We have, I think, as you rightly mentioned, the implementation of the INEC policy is a disaster because there was no strategic. Now, I've always been mentioning this. This was strategic implementation of it. You can strategically implement this policy when you have all necessary data with you in 1 week. You can do that in 1 month. But because you don't have data with you, you don't know the number of transactions that we do, you don't know the number of transactions we have the potential, the system have the potential of doing. You don't know the number of transactions the people would be willing to do when you implement this policy, and you don't know the number of people persons that will be willing to engage in this policy. We don't have this data. And because we don't have this data, these are what was experiencing in the country is as a result of absence of data and analysis. There is no data to analyze, and even if there is data, the analysis has not been done on the data. Or there is data and analysis has been done, but the data is incorrect. That's
Yes, indeed, the situation is actually getting worse. And because before now, you could at least see some cash. But suddenly, after all the promises that things will get better, we're rather seeing things getting even worse. That such that you cannot even go and get. The other time, I wanted to get 10,000 naira. I was only giving I was only giving 1,000, and the POS operators are now making a kill out of the whole thing. But that's notwithstanding. when you now, a lot of people now channel the transaction to the e-transactions, but then the unstructured service delivery, or they call it unstructured supplementary service data, the USSD, is not having problems. Now, we wanted to understand why the transactions were having issues, and we might, okay, maybe there was a time, because there was a time when the operators of the license operators of Nigeria threatened they were going to withdraw the services, USSD services to the banks because of about 80 billion naira owed the license operators. So when this issue started sometime last week, we thought that, okay, probably they have actually implemented their threat to withdraw services. And so the banking apps are having problems. Now, but yes, luckily for us, we contacted the president of that association, and he said no, that they have not started implementing any threat of withdrawing services from the banks. However, just like what you said, the banks were actually overwhelmed by the traffic. So the capacity to carry the number of people that resorted to transaction is not there at an issue. So why do we have to bother ourselves about cashless economy when there's no capacity for that?
It's not. It's whose responsibility is it to ensure that that capacity is built? The infrastructure for you to build that capacity is built. You have the network. You have the data center that is. You have the system already in place, which is the licensed telecom operator. They have everything in place. All they just need to do is to now ask those guys, increase my capacity. Because as it stands now, I used to have 30 people make transaction at a go, 30 sessions active at a go. Now I'm getting 100 sessions active at a go.
Yes.
So you are subscribing for 30, you're getting 100. It means that it is the first 30 that it will take. And when you being the first 30, by the time you pull out and your transaction is not complete, it means that you will go and join the queue and start again from the next 101 before it now gets to your turn. So it's really not about, it's not that we don't have the infrastructure to drive this implementation. Are the banks willing to bear the cost of increasing their capacity in the area of USSD? Noting that, because all these things I really don't know. We are not. Most of our decisions are not data driven. That is, they are not data driven. If our decisions are data driven, we won't be where we are today.
Yes,
because you would know the numbers of people that have the potency or that have the potentials of using USSD. You know the number of, and majorly you know that there are rural areas that will use USSD because they are not enlightened.
yes.
Now, applications, you know that applications is majorly for the urban cities and urban. These are how you analyze things. Then you take decisions. So pushing majority of your funds to USSD application so that there are more capacity to drive this part of the transaction, and also then put lesser worries and lesser funds on the mobile application. Because, but if we don't do analysis, how would you know which to push?
Now that is an indictment actually on the premise of this cashless policy. This whole Naira redesign has actually opened some loopholes in the system. And it has continued to deteriorate that up to now. I don't think we actually understand what we're doing. There seems to be confusion everywhere. Do we continue with the old note? You don't even see the new ones. The old notes, and as at yesterday or so, you cannot even use them for any transactions again. And so, but then the technology that is supposed to help us in the first place, sometimes when people make transactions, you see that it will take a long time before they have that effected, even when their monies have been cut. For those who even use ATM, people like us, I've had a couple of times where I have used that POS, system to make transactions, only for my money to be cut, but the other person was not paid. So what do we do with this kind of system? Why would they cut my pay, cut my money, and I didn't get the services required because the other person was not paid? I don't
Well,
understand.
it is the way the system for the system is designed. It is designed to verify the amount to your account, take the amount, then transfer. So in the course of the algorithm that ensures transfer of money from your account to another person's account, in whatsoever stage there is a step for verification. So if the transaction fails at the point where your money has been deducted and it has not been credited, it invariably means the person will not get the alert, and you see it. So they will now have to go to the back end to verify the process of that transaction to see at what point did it fail. Did it fail at the point of credit or at the point of debit, or then that's what brought about the reversal concept, where if you have not received an auto reversal within a particular period of time, you go to the bank, make complaint, and check and do an auto reversal for you. So again, it's really about putting, and there are banks that, well, I would say probably banks that don't have so much customers, they hardly find themselves in this situation of debt or debit without credit. So now you are a banker or a commercial bank, for example, acquiring customers, in fact, spending a whole lot of funds in getting marketers that will go market for your bank and get new bankers, new people that will bank with you, and you are not building, you're not the number of clients you are getting in that bank, you're not transcending, you're not analyzing to see the possibility of ensuring that you have an equivalent infrastructure to power that. So while there is a place and there is a role where the CBN may have gotten it wrong, there is also a huge role that there is also a huge lapse from the commercial banks, because they themselves it is not CBN that's supposed to make the infrastructure, yes, they are the one that's supposed to make that provision for themselves. Ensuring that you have 1 million, if you have 1 million, what's it called, bank what's it called, clients, you should be able to have at least a minimum concurrently 100,000, 10% concurrent users should be fine, and you'll be okay with it. Yes. So if you are getting more bank users and you're not increasing your banking infrastructure, it invariably means that when things like this happen, you will be. And take note, there are some banks that are fine even with all these situations. There are some banks that are fine, nothing happens to them. You can still do transfer, you can still use the USSD, you can still. So what's the difference between those banks and the other banks that are having issues? It's the fact that those other banks did not prepare for it. They didn't plan for based on the numbers of users and clients that they have working in their banks.
I'm thinking that the regulatory agency, that is the Central Bank of Nigeria, when they bring out this kind of policies, we should also ensure that all the commercial banks meet the standard infrastructure for the implementation of some of these things. So what that means is that it's possible that now that the situation has caught up with them, some of the banks, just like you said, may not have been prepared for it. But I'm thinking that any policy of this nature should have been regulated properly and seen that all the participants, that's the banks involved now, meet all the standards before this kind of thing can go on. We clearly show that there are lapses here and there in terms of the regulatory processes of the Central Bank of Nigeria.
Yes. Now there is definitely, there are system compliance. there are compliance certifications that you get, international best practice ISO certification that you get, even as a bank, commercial, for you to operate a commercial bank, it's a mandatory requirement, like the 27001 certification. It is mandatory for any bank. For you to even be given a license to operate as a bank, you must have that. Even as a microfinance bank, you must have that. There are certain international standards which I know that it's part of the requirement for certain banks to get operational license in Nigeria. But beyond that, the infrastructural standard is what I don't know. If you have operational standard, infrastructure, what's it called? The infrastructure that you need to operate. All I need to do is to ensure that they are working. But infrastructure that you need based on client base, that I don't think we have that level of compliance. So at this point now, policies are meant to reveal, that's the whole essence of law, to reveal weaknesses. Now that we've seen that, I believe now that the central bank has seen that there are lapses in that area, they should design a standard guideline for any bank to be able to grow its client base. It should be able to meet certain level of infrastructural systems for you to be able to grow your client base. So now it now means we'll now have what's called categories of bank, even within the commercial bank, based on client-based subscription. So I think that would
solve. You know why this topic is very important for us as a people and as a country going forward is that we are facing general elections, and these general elections are not like any other election in the history of the country. This perhaps is one of the only election perhaps that we're going into cashless, almost like where you don't have cash anywhere. You have the old cash because of the design policy, and the new ones are not readily available. You see how difficult it is for people to get them, and how people are now at banks, and some are even sleeping in the banks, able to get just very little amount of what they own in the banks. So it's really very difficult for people now. People are going through a lot now, and what we want to do is to proper solutions. For instance, what way forward? What do you think will be the way forward in this instance, in this situation, when we're facing general elections and this kind of cash crunch?
Well, the truth of the matter is that, well, for me, I really don't have so much issues with those in the city personally, because I believe majority of city-based persons have now there's now the POS service in almost all nooks and crannies of within the city. My major concern are those that are in the rural areas. Yes, because how would they access the POS machine? What they know that POS, how would they operate? They need for training and all that. So if we can increase the USSD, knowing fully well that the rural area would depend heavily in USSD, if we can increase the USSD infrastructural base so that it's able to accommodate more persons, that's one thing we can do. More persons will have to be able to do more transactions without paying or debiting and not getting it back. Then the second thing we can do is to ensure that I'm not an economist, so I don't know the level of cash that needs to be available for students to be able to control the fiscal aspect of the because the truth of the matter is that more cash needs to be available, and it should be strategically deployed. Because now, from the interview that the Syrian government gave recently, he said some politicians are mopping up the new currency. That's why it's scarce. It's not as though that the currency is not, they didn't push enough to go around. It only means that some politicians got that CBN thought that they sent out. Some politicians have been able to lay hold of that enough, and they are holding it for their election purposes. That's what he said. So it now means that there needs to be a new way of pushing out the car for the real people to be able to get it. Yes. So they need to think out of the box.
But this, Hanya, this is where the challenge is. This project or this policy was actually meant to stop politicians from getting this money, holding the money, and using it for vote buying. The president of the federation himself made that comment when he said that he will not allow people to deploy resources, in terms of monetary resources now, to use to intimidate people and buy votes during the elections. Now that the policies have been reeled out, and the same money you giving one politicians to have hold of are now actually ending up in the coffers of the politicians. And then with all the consequent problems and difficulties that we're now facing, of what use is really this policy?
Yeah, it may have ended up in the hands of the politician, but not us. That's another thing we need to take note of. Not if 300 billion was sent into the economy, there is no politician that can boast of all the money that probably the politicians have now, everything that they have all together cannot be up to 150 million. And you don't need that amount of money to be able to influence election. It will be too small for them to be. If not, they really won't. At this point, they still wouldn't have been in Supreme Court if they know that they have enough to influence the election. It's because they probably, I'm working with the assumption that they probably don't have enough that can be used to influence the election. That is why they are still pushing for more money, more funds to be released. And even when the funds are released, they'll still mop up the funds because they have their ways of assessing the guys. Some of them don't have banks. Some of them have microfinance banks. So just to liaise with the banks, some of them they have. Yes, CBN needs to think out of the box. That's the bottom line. You need to think out of the box, out of the norms, to be able to ensure that the woman that says Akara gets that money, the man that says the shy man gets that new currency, and the tailor that puts his machine on his shoulder to sew gets that money. They have to think out of the box. That's the bottom line. So if they don't think out of the box, we'll still be in this situation.
So how possible is that now? Very they see this is a real argument. This is a real challenge, and you are coming from the streets. You have seen the groanings and moanings of the people. You can see people going almost naked, some completely naked in the banking halls because they cannot access their money, not through the banking hall, not through electronic means. So it's really a dilemma for the Nigerian people at this point in time, because even the CBN, the position of the CBN right now is not even reassuring. Where exactly are we on this matter?
Well, from my own perspective, which is my personal opinion, I just believe that the whole situation is a political situation. Anything from 25th evening of February, all these things will die in natural death. From 25th evening, let's just say 27th, because that's probably when work starts and others. All these things will die in natural death. So whatever policy that's coming from, even though the policy is not backed by politics, it was not initiated by political means or because of politics, it's in a way tied with politics. Yeah, so, which for me, I don't know how patient Nigerian can be till the 27th or the 25th of February, which is like 10 days. 10 days from now. I don't know how patient we can be. Can we hold it up?
That have been affected so far.
They would have, I believe, another thing that they would have done earlier, prior to now, was to release PS machines to people for free, or design. There's this very small. It looks very small. You would attach it to your mobile phone. You connect it with your mobile phone. So if you're using an Android phone, you connect it to your Android phone, and you slot your card into that small thing, and you connect it. You do that integrated into the system, so that once that will knock off anything that has to do with payment for services and all that. Making sure that you have to grab that, and it would have been easier to operate, easier to go around, because the technology is just a small thing. Yeah. So that I believe it was one area that the central bank did not.
They were not proactive at all, and they should have done so before bringing out this policy to prevent. Because right now, streets are not good enough and people are not happy about what is going on. And we also beckon on the CBN as an authority to find a way to let people have their money in the remaining days because the situation is not, people are not smiling at all in the streets. So, it's on that note that we come to the end of today's edition of Money Radio on Leadership Podcast. I've been in the studio with an ICT expert doing justice to this very important topic. Hamia Jafaro has always been here for us, has always been giving us his professional touch on the program. Hamia, thanks once again for joining us in the program. So we're going to round up now and promise to bring you a bumper edition when next we come. Stay blessed and just find a way to navigate through the difficulties at this point in time. God willing, everything will come to an end. It's a matter of days.